Welcome to the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I'm Coach Lisa Callahan, a recovered emotional eater. I ended decades of self-inflicted struggles with food through taking a journey of self-discovery, which revealed the secrets of what was going on underneath the food. Throughout this podcast, we'll explore topics that are rarely talked about, like low self-esteem, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, and decades of self-sabotaging behaviors. Rather than just focusing on the food, we'll dive deeper into aspects of who you are as a person and how you ended up relying on food for comfort to begin with. My mission is simple: to empower women to regain their confidence and prioritize self-love, regardless of the number on the scale. Discover what you've really been craving, and trust me, it's not about the food. This podcast is based on insights shared from the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook, so be sure to check out the show notes for the link to the group and a complimentary gift just for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome to another fun and insightful episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. The topic today is how to discover what you're really craving other than food. This is part 3 of our 5-part series on how self-discovery can fix emotional eating. This episode could really be the one that changes your life because honestly, it's the one thing that truly changed mine. So stay tuned for the whole episode because everything I have to share with you is equally as important. First, we're going to recap a bit about episodes 1 and 2 because I want to reiterate how critical it is to have those foundational steps in place before you start to use self-discovery to fix your emotional eating habits. Think about it like this. If you're planning to build a new house, and you spend time gathering the building materials. But then you get to the lot where you plan to build the new house, only to discover that there's an old house on the lot. So what do you have to do? Well, you'll have to first tear down the old house before you start to build the new one. And even if you've already spent tons of time gathering the new materials, you still cannot build a new house on top of the old one. You must first have the space, and in this case, aka headspace, to start building something new. And that's why episodes 1 and 2, we talked about how to stop thinking about weight loss so that you can start to create a new foundational relationship with yourself where the thoughts that are meant to keep you stuck will no longer be there anymore. And that will give you the ability to start to become a forward thinker. The past you, she's been thinking about weight loss for decades. And in fact, it's all she ever thinks about, which is why it's so dangerous. It leaves you with a very unrealistic expectation of the person that you'll become once you lose the weight. As of recent, global surveys show that approximately 52% of adults worldwide claim that weight loss is their ultimate goal. And yet studies also consistently show that approximately 80 to 95% of the people that lose weight gain it back within 1 to 5 years. So clearly the future you, the one who no longer struggles with emotional eating, she wouldn't ever get an opportunity to exist if you keep going in this pattern over and over again, where you tell yourself that weight loss is your goal, then you put it back on again, and then some. I mean, these are really high statistics. And I don't know if you're anything like me who's been struggling with that same thing for 30 years, maybe it's time to just take a different angle, like a different perspective on what it is that you're doing. So let's talk about the future you. Who is she? The future you, she actually never thinks about weight loss. I never think about weight loss anymore, ever. And I thought that that was impossible for me. So if you think, well, Lisa, there's no way I could ever not think about weight loss, I'd go off the rails. I hear you, my friend. I did it too. So your future self, she simply makes decisions that serve her best interest. So she knows that even if she's, doing something that involves her having a piece of cake or a glass of wine or like chips or like whatever, she knows that she's not going to go overboard because she's the one that's actually for you. Like she wants you to feel good about yourself. And she knows that if you take that third glass of wine or that, fourth pizza, like she knows you're not going to feel good. And she always has your best interest at heart. Since she already likes herself and she already has confidence, well, her well-being is just too darn important to her. And she's not going to use food as a crutch or a coping mechanism because a lot of the things that actually, bothered her in the past don't even bother her anymore. So food is just food and feelings are feelings. And she knows that she's allowed to feel all of her feelings. She knows that food is just meant to be eaten and that feelings are all meant to be felt. And not just some feelings, like all feelings. Researcher Brene Brown shares that when you try to shut down or avoid feelings that you think are quote unquote bad, like you might think sadness is bad or anger or shame or guilt or anxiety, and you try and shut those things down, you also accidentally end up dulling the ones that actually feel like they're the ones you want, like joy and love and excitement and connection and creativity. Now, I know this information that I'm teaching you is all new. And even if you've heard some of these concepts before, you haven't applied them to your food thing. And if you had, you'd probably have fixed the problem already, right? So this is why this is a foundational step, and it has to be put into place so that you have a clear space in your head to build a new relationship with yourself. One where food actually becomes an afterthought and your mental health and your physical happiness, like, this happiness that exudes out of you, those are your top priorities. And this is why it's really important to spend some time clearing out the old thoughts so that you can make room for new thoughts that are meant to serve your best interest. And the trick is here, you can't have both. So this brings me to the recap of part 2 of our 5-part series, where you get to learn how to unlearn some of the old food rules that got you into this trouble to begin with. And you get to reboot your mindset to gain a new level of awareness. So if you don't know about levels of awareness yet, and go back and listen to episode 18 where I talk about levels of awareness. And this one will give you some insights as to what type of emotional eater you are and what level of awareness you're in. So if you're a bit confused about what I'm talking about, when I'm telling you to reboot your mindset to gain a new level of awareness, go back and listen to that episode because that's the one that's going to really clue you in to the bigger picture. So years ago, I was at a level of awareness that kept me thinking that I basically had to live on a diet for my entire life. Since, I was just one of those people who couldn't be trusted around food. I blamed the food for all my problems, and I thought that the solution was that I just had to keep food out of my sight and I couldn't eat it at all. Then, on the flip side of that, when I did have an opportunity and I could justify eating it all, I ate it all. Since, I didn't have to be so restrictive, I would go completely overboard. And then I would tell myself that, okay, just one more thing, just another day, like I can, and then I would push myself back almost as if I was just going to go back into a cage. And I could feel it coming like a speeding train just coming to hit me. And I started this behavior in the late 80s, probably by, 86, 87. That's when I really started my first diets, and I continued to work on perfecting my eating habits for, the course of most of my adult life. And then on the flip side of that, all bets were off, and I just binged, lethal doses of sugar, incredible amounts of fat and processed foods, and all the things that I didn't believe in. I went right ahead and just put those all in my body, thus betraying my own trust in myself and my own integrity. So until 2015, when I went to my first self-discovery class, I didn't know any better. So I couldn't do any better. So back in those days, I would have actually described myself as being busy. Somebody asked me, "Hey, Lisa, how you doing?" I'd be like, "Oh, busy, keeping busy." So that was pretty much my go-to. And because I was so busy, well, gosh, you're so busy. Of course, you have to be like very nervous about things. And, I'm a worry wart. Like that's what I do. Like I felt like if I didn't worry about things, and maybe like somebody would think I didn't care, like how could I not worry about things? Of course I'm going to worry. That's who I am. And so because I had this, perception of myself as being the worrier, I just thought that that was what would make people like me, because I cared about them, because I thought about them, because I thought about them more than they thought about themselves. I thought this was a good thing. And it's not that it's not nice to care about people. It's just that when you're using that caring about others to hurt yourself, they didn't give you permission to do that. So it doesn't work well. Plus, it's completely not sustainable. I ended up becoming my own worst critic, and I shared this openly. I told people that I was my own worst enemy, that I was the most critical of myself. I knew that I was really hard on myself, and I wore it sort of like a badge of honor. Like suffering became like a good thing. I mean, after all, I had been struggling with perfectionism for years and years, and so I was very firmly locked into that all or nothing mindset. So it was pretty easy to feel bad about myself and beat myself up on a daily basis because, I was always feeling like I failed. And deep down, I kind of felt like I deserved it. So there was this secret that I thought that I was keeping with myself where, on the outside, I tried to present myself as such a competent person. People could trust me. People could come to me for help. But I never shared with anybody how insecure I was feeling or how fundamentally flawed that I knew I was deep down inside. Anytime I had an achievement or an accomplishment, I couldn't give myself a pat on the back. I had to say to myself, yeah, if they only knew the real you. And so I was really, setting myself up to basically continue to put myself in a position where there was no option other than to fail. And it's really interesting because I thought that I hid this from people so well. And I was so worried about what other people thought of me, everything from what I was eating to my body image to, if somebody thought I was a nice person or if somebody got mad at me, like I couldn't bear the thought of somebody being mad at me. And so I allowed all of this worry, even after I had a conversation, it was like, did I say the wrong thing? Did I say the right thing? Did I laugh at the right part? They laughed, when I said this, were they laughing at me or were they laughing with me? I don't even know. Like I had lost like all sense of self. And this stuff consumed me 24 hours a day. So it's a no wonder that I felt so exhausted and overwhelmed and scared and dissatisfied with myself. No matter what I tried, I continuously felt like a failure. Plus, I just didn't put two and two together yet. Like I thought that was one part of me and that food was just something to be controlled. Like I didn't know that these two things actually matched. I never in a million years could have predicted that the two were so deeply connected and that the very roots of my relationship with food was buried underneath decades of self-loathing. Since I was about 11 years old, and I have other thoughts that came from even way before that, even at 3, I can remember, just learning that like maybe I was, I don't know, a little chubby or thick or husky, but it didn't really affect me very much in the sense that, I wasn't doing anything about it. Well, when I was about 11 years old, I did start focusing on my body and my eating. And I don't remember it. I actually found a weight chart when I was moving. And I had made this with a piece of loose leaf paper and crayons. And it showed how obsessed I was with my weight even back then. And apparently, again, even though I do not remember this, like when I found it, I was like, oh my gosh, how sad. Like I'm an 11-year-old weighing myself every day. And I would give myself little gold stars if I lost weight. And if I gained weight, I had this little like key, this little chart. If I gained weight, I would draw myself like a gray sword. So clearly, weight had been pointed out to me, I guess, at a young age. And it only got worse from there. I even wrote in a little diary there that I had to lose weight because I was almost the same weight as my grandma. But I was 11 and she was, like 70 something. And so in my mind, I think I just thought that like as you age, you're supposed to like every doctor's appointment that you go to, you're like, oh, good, you're 56 pounds now. Oh, good, you're, 67 pounds now. And then all of a sudden you get to be 89 and it's like, whoa, put the pause button on. And you're like, wait, what? And at that age, I was already like, I think the weights on those charts said like, I don't know, 104 pounds. And I was in sixth grade and my grandma was little. She was only 4'10" or 4'11". But I think she weighed like, I don't even know, 118, let's say. And so in my mind, I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm starting already over 100 pounds. Now what's going to happen? I'm just going to keep going. And it scared me. I guess I just shut it down and I started to focus, solely on these things that were just absolutely unrealistic and absolutely fear-based. So by the time I was 19 and I had completed my first personal fitness training certification and my first bodybuilding competition, I decided seriously that there was a specific right way to eat and a wrong way to eat. And this entered me into the beginnings of decades of all or nothing, judgment, blame, regret, comparison, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, false superiority, because I just thought I knew everything about what to eat and how much to eat it, how little to eat, and what times to eat, and what kinds of food to eat, and what brands to eat. Like I had this complete false superiority going on. Then it all led to the same place, guilt. Goodness gracious, the guilt, it was just always there. And in fact, over the years, I intuitively knew that if I could just get rid of the guilt, I would feel a whole lot better about myself. But I just didn't know how to do that yet. And I thought that I was just stuck because I didn't know that I had the freedom to choose my thoughts. I had no idea how simple it was to clear those ideas from my head and start with a clean slate, like a clear place in my head. So I lived my life gathering all sorts of new information, exercise certifications, nutrition courses, new diet theories, and really expensive bar and shake and pill systems. And until I started to question myself and why I thought the need to stay on all these fancy diet systems, I just kept relating the same old things to, what I was doing year after year after year. And so until I learned that I don't have to believe everything that I think because some of my thoughts are the very same thoughts that are meant to keep me stuck, I just kept thinking the same thought. So as I suggested in episode 2, if you're constantly adding new information by going on new diet after diet after diet, you're gonna have to stop thinking that first because you must make room in your head for new information if you're ever gonna clear out that old story. So let me just be clear. The reason why self-discovery works to fix emotional eating is because it teaches you to have an open mind so that there will be room for new ideas. One of the first things that we teach our students in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, which is the elite coaching community where I coach my students on how to take a journey of self-discovery to identify their invisible emotional relationship with food and fix this for good. But we teach them when they first come in that a closed mind cannot accept any new ideas. And without new ideas, you're just going to keep going over the same things over and over again, and then expecting different results. And this habit is actually the definition of insanity. So let's do this together. Envision for a moment that you have a big book and it has your name on it. It's your life story. And in it, there are many familiar pages. Because you've read this story so many times, you literally could predict the ending of most of the chapters. You also know that there are some things in the story that just trigger you to act in a certain way. That's why people can honestly say, well, in this situation, I'm like this. And in that kind of situation, I'm like that. And well, don't say X, Y, or Z to me because I know that I'm probably going to lose my you-know-what. You see, we know our old story so well that it's predictable. We're predictable, which is why the old story must change first so that you can make room for new ideas. All right, so getting back to my analogy. So let's say you have that book with your name on it and you decide to rip it into 5 separate sections and lay the chapters of the story down in the bottom of 5 bags. And along the way, after you're holding these 5 bags up, for a long time, you've got 5 bags in both arms, right? So you're full. You cannot pick up anything new. Unless you put down one of those old bags, you're not picking up anything new. So you hold the bags and you're not picking up anything new, but what you're doing instead is you're gathering new information and new tools and new ideas, and you're piling that new stuff into the top part of the bag. But remember, your old story is still at the bottom of the bag. So think about all of this new stuff as being like your diet plans, your food journals, calorie counters, and even reading and podcasts and meditations. Like, how many times have I'm sure you've listened to a million podcasts, but you don't necessarily know the person who's doing the podcast. How many books do you have on your shelf? Is that author talking to you? Is that author calling you up on the phone and having conversations with you like I do with my students? No. And so the thing is that you can listen to me from here until the end of time. And I really do hope that helps you. But if you're just taking the information that I'm giving you and putting it on top of the old stuff, the old story that's in the bags, well, guess what? Well, it might seem like a great thing to do. And thank you so much for being a supporter here. Like, I'm happy to have you listening. And I do believe that, even if perhaps that it's not the time for us to work together, and maybe it's not ever the time for us to work together, I do believe that there is value in listening to this information. But I really want to push you a little bit more, into a little bit more of a level of awareness than that. Like, I want to let you know that it doesn't have to be this way forever. So while it seems like a great idea to just listen to more and more, information and go on new diets and get, these great books with information, well, I'm sure that that's a good idea. And it definitely would seem to add value to your life. All of that stuff is not necessarily going to fix the root cause of the problem for good. Because remember, the root cause of the problem lives within your past story. And there's no point in keeping your past story. Like, you don't need it anymore. And with your past story living at the bottom of those bags, what ends up happening is that when life comes along and shakes you and rattles you, which it will, it always does, you kind of hit a bump in the road. And now think about yourself holding 5 bags and you hit a bump in the road and you're like, ba-bump. And then your arms shake and all of the new stuff from the tops of the bag spills out. And then you have no choice. You are left to reach into the bottom of the bag for the old information that's stored about you. And that's why so many times it's shocking. you feel like, no, I'm a different me. I've changed. I'm the new me. I'm not anything like my past self. Well, until you heal that part of your past self, until you forgive her, until she, that past version of yourself, forgives others, and until you actually change the story. So the old story is being interpreted by a new version of yourself. Until that happens, you're going to keep saying stuff like, I'm just having an off day, or I hate when I'm like this. I don't know what just comes over me. These are the moments where the old story underneath there, the shame, the guilt, the disappointment, the regret, this is where they consume you. So the times that you say something that you didn't mean, or you do something that you wish you could take back, like eat an entire box of cookies just because you had a fight with your spouse or a frustration at work with a coworker. With this old stuff sitting at the bottom of those bags, you are going to feel weighed down. You're going to feel resistant, dissatisfied, and bored. Yep, bored. Since the old story is boring. The trick is, instead of continuously putting the new stuff on top of the old stuff, with self-discovery, you can learn how to unlearn some of those old ideas and those beliefs about yourself so that you can start to pick up some new stuff and let that settle into the spaces at the bottom of the bags. And this is how you can start to build a strong foundation with the new you. If not, you're just going to keep going in circles, just as you have been. And ask yourself this question: how's my way working? If it's working, great, but don't kid yourself if it's not. So let's do this exercise. Write down on your piece of paper, what 3 thoughts will I have to get rid of so that I am going to be able to make room for some new headspace? And I want you to think things like, I'll have to stop telling myself that I can't be trusted around food. And also things like, I'll have to stop telling myself that if food's in the house, I just have to eat it all. I can't trust myself. I'll go off the rails. And I'll also have to stop telling myself I'll start over again tomorrow. Because the truth is, the girl who is standing right here today, let's say it's Monday, and Monday girl says, I'll start over again on Tuesday. But then Tuesday girl says, I'll start over again on Wednesday. And Wednesday girl says, I'll start over again on Thursday. And then Thursday girl says, I'll just start over again on Monday again. I mean, this is just like a trick. And that's a denial, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So let's say, for example, that you just started off by getting those 3 thoughts out of your head. That will give you the ability to have room in your head to come up with 3 new thoughts. And some of those new thoughts will actually put you as being the hero of the story instead of the villain, where you're used to telling yourself you're your own worst enemy, and you're used to telling yourself all of these negative things that are actually mean and actually meant to hurt you. So in your new story, you will get to be strong and courageous and confident and connected. And you're going to have inner peace that you deserve so that you no longer have to use food as a crutch or to cope or, to de-escalate stress. And since you'll be focused on your inner self and your inner peace, and you'll start making decisions that support your best interest in life, so you won't be as stressed because you'll no longer be waiting for life to change. You will be the change that you want to see in the world, your world. And trust me, if you start making decisions that are supporting your best interest, you will naturally not want to overeat. And then, and only then, will your body naturally begin to lose weight. There's a quote from Margaret Young, and this quote is about money, but it really does share a similar concept, so I want to share it with you. She says, oftentimes people attempt to live their lives backwards. They try to have more things or more money in order to have more, They try to have more things or more money in order to do more of the things that they want to do. so that then they'll be happier. The way that it actually works is in reverse. You must first be who you really are, then do what you really need to do in order to have what you really want. So it's the same thing here. You must first believe in yourself so that you can then change your habits to support the future you, who you want to be. So once you have your mindset cleared out, you can begin to set a course towards your future self. The idea is that instead of taking up time rehashing all the old stories, that you'll now have the time and the energy to start memorizing a future version of yourself. This concept of memorizing a future version of myself seemed crazy to me. Memorize a future version of myself? How is that possible? I have no reference for a future version of myself because in my mind, I would always have to be focused on my weight. I would always have to restrict myself, and I would always have no choice but to control myself around food. After all, I had proven that I couldn't trust myself at least a few thousand times. So what would make me think that a future version of myself could even exist? Well, it all comes down to purpose. Once your purpose speaks louder to you than your excuses, everything begins to change. And for me, it all comes down to one single word: integrity. Once integrity became my sole purpose in life, I had to reassess some of my core strengths, characteristics, and admit the things about myself that I was desperately trying to hide and that I was in denial about. I was so scared to be myself for the fear that people wouldn't like the real me that I pretended over and over to be someone I was not. I presented myself as this perfect person, someone who never needed anything. It was like I convinced myself that the world was divided into two separate types of people: those who needed help and those who provided it. So I decided that asking for help was a sign of weakness, and I did everything that I could to never let anyone think that I didn't have everything under control. Honestly, I was fooling no one. I have talked to so many people who knew me back then, and everyone could see that I was living in some sort of pain. Everyone knew that I was struggling with self-esteem and insecurity. Everyone but me, that is. I was terrified to show that side of myself, afraid that if anyone ever knew the real me, the insecure me, the fearful me, the unsure of herself me, the guilty me, that people would abandon me. So I made it my mission in life to take care of others, to never complain, to never let others see me sweat. And I did everything that I could to give the impression that I was superhuman, which honestly made me pretty unrelatable. So it's not surprising that I could feel lonely in a room full of people. And it's also not surprising that I was embarrassed when I even cried, like in a therapist's office, because she pointed out to me, like, well, Lisa, you actually are human after all. And I literally took that as an insult. And instead of letting my guard down because I had shown this vulnerable side of myself, I put my guard up, even around her. Because let's face it, the truth can be scary. It seems so much easier to fake your way through life and to suffer the consequences alone. But you're not really alone. The things that are paining you are hard for your family as well. It's hard for your friends to see this. It's hard to continue to keep this facade up. And so the person who you think that, you're showing the rest of the world, like, she's the one that you're showing to yourself. And that's the girl that's in pain. And so you're showing the worst version of yourself to yourself. And you feel like it's okay because you feel like, well, it's just me. Yeah, it is just you. You and you inside of your one head. And so the thing is that all of this stuff is wrapped up in your painful past and, your injustices and trauma. And I promise you, there's so much more to explore than your past. And it causes this ability to be able to convince ourselves to live comfortably uncomfortable in this, zone of denial where all of the problems get to hide out forever until you step in front of them, which is why it's so critical to start to explore yourself, as a deeper person. A lot of times people will push that away. They'll be like, there is no deeper side of myself. This is it. Or, maybe just not being open-minded. And the thing about it is that a closed mind cannot accept any new ideas. So, if you're pushing away some of these new ideas, just ask yourself, is that what I want? And how is my way working for me? So, talking again about the denials, there's a quote that I share with my Crush That Food Thing self-discovery system students. And it says, we're used to saying, uncover the truth, which actually, that can make the truth a little bit scary. The truth is, uncover the denials. The freedom is in the truth. And the truth is that I was stuck standing in my own way for decades until I learned to do this one thing. I started to get curious. I started to ask myself, what was the one common denominator every time I ate? And just when I ate something that I didn't want to eat, what was the common thing that kept coming up over and over and over again? For me, and you might have heard this in previous episodes, the answer was guilt. Now, granted, in the first few moments of eating, I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. So I know that first little piece can feel like, I need this. And then you get it and you're like, get it. But that was short-lived. And the feelings that came after it, those lasted for the rest of the day into the next day. And I spent most of my life waking up in the morning, every morning, thinking that I had failed. Since upon opening my eyes, I instantaneously remembered all of the wrongdoings that I had done with food the night before. I mean, if I didn't eat something wrong the day before, how else could I continue to get my bad feelings about myself as soon as my eyes popped open? It was literally like a sure thing. So as soon as I started to question myself, it really got me thinking. Was the feeling bad about myself and feeling guilty what I was actually craving? Could that be? Was the craving for guilt coming from a subconscious part of me? A place that would bury deep inside, underneath the denials, underneath the cover-up stories, underneath the fake confidence and the overwhelming thoughts that bogged me down 24 hours a day? Was it all a setup of my subconscious intentions? So I've learned in my self-discovery courses, which I first took with Your Infinite Life coaching company, that you will always discover your subconscious intentions by looking at the results that you're getting that are mismatched from what you say you want. So when I told myself I was going to eat one cookie, I certainly didn't consciously make a decision to feel guilt. And yet this is a thing that I ended up with after I ate over and over again, because I didn't stop at the one cookie. So I set myself up. And this is where I began to explore the possibilities that guilt was what I was actually subconsciously craving, and that I was just using food to get to it. And since by this time now I was open to learning new things about myself, I started with some experiments. I began challenging myself to eat without guilt. With every bite, I asked myself, Lisa, if you take this next bite, will that make you feel guilty? If the answer was no, I took the next bite. If the answer was, I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe, I put the thing down and I waited until I was sure. I really had to pay close attention to what I was doing and what I was going to feel like after I ate, because this allowed me the freedom to choose how I wanted to feel instead of just ending up feeling guilty and then being confused about and mad at myself about my actions. So it was like suddenly I was on my own team. I started to become an ally instead of an enemy. And through this experimental phase, many times I actually got bored of eating because the guilt inside of me knew that I wasn't going to feed her at that moment. So I ended up eating a lot less than I normally would, which started to end with the, fluctuation of my weight coming down, since I was no longer caught in a binge eating or starving cycle where I was just like destroying my entire metabolism. So I continue with this experiment with other choices too. For example, I came to the realization that anytime I ate in front of the computer, TV, phone, or on the go, like in my car, I would always feel guilty afterwards, since those were the times that I tended to lose my focus or not taste my food or, feel nervous and antsy and tell myself that I just needed a crunch, instead of eating and feeling satisfied and peaceful. Because at its core, food is satisfying and peaceful. It's nourishment. But in my case, I was actually using it to nourish the weakest version of myself. In essence, when I was not paying attention, I was using food to feed negative thoughts about myself. And so feeding that feeling that I already had, that was part of my old story. And that story was just sitting there waiting for me to mess up. And living this way made me feel nervous and anxious and unsure of myself, which is why taking the time to work on my inner self has helped so much of my regular life. Because I was focused on feeling good, content, confident, and aware. I was much less worried, fearful, and actually started sleeping more soundly, which I had never done in my life. I used to have a sleep thing. And this alone has helped me feel so much less tired because I wasn't exhausted from staying up all night. My cravings for sugar disappeared. Can you see how this works? First, you have to meet yourself right where you're at so that you can accept how you got here in the first place. Then you have to open your mindset to allow new thoughts to come in. And then, and only then, can you start to change your habits to match your future self. And that, my friends, is how you are going to use self-discovery to crush your food thing. And that's a wrap of part 3 of our 5-part series on self-discovery can fix emotional eating for good. To learn more about our program, our signature program, Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, comment the word crush below or shoot me a DM on social media. Don't forget to join the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook and get started on our beginner's course, The Mindset Makeover, where you can get a taste of how self-discovery works so that you can see if it's a good fit for you. And trust me when I say it's a good fit for everyone. It just depends on what level of awareness you're at and what type of emotional eater you are. So again, go back to episode 18 if you want to check out that episode. All right, thanks again for joining me. I love that you're open to exploring new thoughts and ideas and concepts about emotional eating and how to fix it. Remember, anyone can sell you a diet plan. I'd like to teach you how to never need one again. You deserve to live an extraordinary life where food does not invade every thought and where you can crush your cravings with confidence. Until next time, my friends, bye for now. All right, my beautiful friend, that brings us to the end of another episode from the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today and took something from our conversation that you are going to put into immediate action. I love spending time with you and would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with at least one friend today who you think might be struggling too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other amazing topics. And please, please do leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.